It was still early in Ouagadougou. The air was heavy, thick with dust, and the quiet streets outside the presidential palace betrayed no sign that something was about to erupt. Inside, behind simple wooden doors, Captain Ibrahim Traoré sat in his office, calm, focused, surrounded only by his papers and silence. He had seen betrayal before. He had smelled treachery before. But today was different. A request had landed on his desk, unexpected and urgent. A French businessman wanted an audience, promising investment, offering miracles, too eager, too polished. Traoré leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. His instincts screamed. His generals waited for orders. His advisors whispered warnings. But Traoré smiled. "Let him come," he said quietly. "We'll catch him in the act." What the spy didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that he had already walked into a trap. A trap that would not only expose his mission, but humiliate the very powers who sent him. A spy came to deceive. But the hunter was already waiting. What happened next would shake the foundations of Africa's old order. In this video, let's know what really happened. The winds of change had been sweeping across Africa, and Burkina Faso stood firmly at the eye of the storm. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, the old colonial order was not just challenged, it was shattered. France, which once dictated life across the Sahel with its soldiers, bankers, and so-called development experts, had been forced to pack its bags and retreat. Where French NGOs and Western aid agencies once held sway, Russian engineers and African entrepreneurs now planted seeds of real independence. Roads stretched across dusty plains where none had existed. New irrigation systems transformed barren land into fertile fields. For the first time in living memory, Burkina Faso was building not for foreign masters, but for itself. But every brick laid, every road paved, every field irrigated, it all sent ripples of panic through the corridors of Western power. Their empire was collapsing, not with a bang, but with quiet determination. And when they could no longer control Burkina Faso openly, they resorted to subtler weapons, espionage masked as investment. It was into this charged atmosphere that Jean-Luc Dupont arrived, not just as a businessman, but as a carefully crafted instrument of a desperate colonial system trying to reclaim lost ground. When Jean-Luc Dupont first stepped through the marble halls of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, he played his part flawlessly. Polished shoes, expensive suit, a briefcase filled with promises. He spoke the language of opportunity, of modernization, of partnership. He offered sweet words about technology platforms that could revolutionize Burkina Faso's agricultural sector. But Traoré, who had spent years studying not only military strategy, but also colonial tactics, saw through the performance instantly. The language was too rehearsed. The promises came too easily. The gaps in Dupont's company history were too wide to ignore. Traoré recognized the real game immediately, noticing an old imperial trick dressed in new corporate clothing. Yet instead of rejecting the offer outright and causing a diplomatic incident, Traoré chose a far more lethal response. He set the bait. With silent precision, Traoré's intelligence teams fabricated a full portfolio of false development plans, projects that looked credible, but hid strategic traps and fake priorities. When Dupont accepted the documents with a triumphant smile, he believed he had deceived the Burkinabe leadership. In reality, he had walked directly into a trap from which there would be no elegant escape. The days that followed were of silent warfare. Burkina Faso's intelligence operatives shadowed Dupont's every move, photographing secret meetings, recording hushed conversations, tracking digital footprints. What they uncovered was even bigger than anyone had anticipated. Dupont was just a single pawn in a much wider network of European operatives, tied to multinational corporations and foreign ministries still desperate to sink their claws back into Africa's rising nations. Yet Traoré remained calm. He didn't storm embassies or issue reckless threats. Instead, he built his case brick by brick, evidence by evidence, waiting for the perfect moment. And when that moment came, he struck, not with weapons, but with truth. Before a packed hall of local and international journalists, Traoré revealed everything. Dressed in traditional Burkinabe attire to symbolize the authenticity of his struggle, he detailed how foreign agents attempted to deceive his government. He showed photographs of meetings, leaked copies of the fake documents being passed along diplomatic channels, and presented witness testimonies. But Traoré's brilliance lay in what he didn't do. He didn't call for retaliation. He didn't stoke hatred. He stood before the world and said calmly, "Burkina Faso will defend itself, not through anger, but through strength. Not through violence, but through unwavering vigilance." In that moment, the world saw a different kind of African leader, one who didn't just resist colonialism, but outsmarted it with dignity intact. France reeled from the exposure. European networks scrambled to cover their tracks. And around Africa, from Mali to Niger to Guinea, young leaders took notice. Africa was changing, and Burkina Faso was lighting the way. The exposure of Jean-Luc Dupont and the foreign espionage network should have ended the crisis. In any normal situation, it would have forced the old colonial powers to retreat in embarrassment. But Ibrahim Traoré understood the deeper reality. Exposing one plot was not the end. It was merely the opening move. As soon as the evidence of the failed infiltration was made public, new tactics began to unfold behind closed doors. European diplomats, red-faced from the humiliation, started floating threats of economic sanctions, hoping to suffocate the Burkinabe resurgence before it could inspire others. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, and current affairs impacting your lives. Western media, desperate to reclaim the narrative, painted Traoré as a paranoid strongman, warning the world that Burkina Faso was turning inward and isolating itself from international partners. Yet Traoré showed no sign of retreat. Where other leaders might have issued defensive statements or begged for understanding, he instead went on the offensive, but not with bombs, nor with angry speeches. Traoré answered with undeniable facts. Launching the Truth for Sovereignty campaign, he turned the tables entirely, broadcasting real footage of Burkina Faso's development like thriving farms powered by local irrigation systems, schools rising from the dust without a penny of foreign aid, factories owned and operated by Burkinabe citizens. It wasn't propaganda. It was reality, filmed by the very people living it. As the images spread across Africa, something remarkable happened. In dusty villages and bustling towns from Bamako to Niamey, mothers gathering water, farmers tending new fields, and young students lifting textbooks in newly built classrooms all began to rally behind Burkina Faso's vision. The West could spin headlines, they could lobby for sanctions, but they could not argue against what the people could now see with their own eyes. A model of true independence, tangible and inspiring. Traoré's revolution was no longer just a political statement. It had become a living, breathing movement. It was on a cool afternoon inside Ouagadougou's new innovation center, a building that itself stood as a symbol of self-sufficient progress, that the spirit of this revolution took human form. The crowd was electric when a small figure stepped onto the stage. Fatou, a girl no older than 15, holding a battered book close to her chest. It had belonged to her mother, a woman who had dreamed of a better Burkina Faso, but had died believing it might never come. Now, standing before hundreds, with cameras capturing every word, Fatou lifted the book high and spoke without trembling. "Thanks to this revolution," she said, her voice firm and clear, "I can dream again, not just for me, but for my people." The room erupted into a roar of applause, tears streaming down the faces of old farmers, young entrepreneurs, and mothers alike. Traoré, sitting in the front row, rose to his feet and embraced her, not as a president meeting a citizen, but as a father embracing the future he had sworn to protect. This was what it had all been for, not just outwitting a spy, not merely dodging economic warfare, but planting seeds that would one day grow into forests so vast that no empire could ever cut them down again. Traoré understood that the real battlefield wasn't in the negotiation rooms of Brussels or Washington. It was here, in the hopes of children like Fatou, in the hands of farmers reclaiming their fields, in the dreams of a continent that for too long had been taught to doubt its own worth. Yes, the old powers would continue to scheme. Spies would return in different disguises. Sanctions might yet be imposed. But Burkina Faso had crossed a threshold no amount of political pressure could erase. It was no longer a question of resistance. It was a declaration of ownership. A nation had risen not with arms, not with aid, but with a belief in its own capacity to build a destiny no foreign hand could dictate. In the end, the real story of Burkina Faso was not about espionage or even about oil, gold, or political alliances. It was about something far more dangerous to the old world order, a people who had discovered the depth of their own power. Traoré understood better than anyone that sovereignty was not a gift bestowed by foreign governments. It was a decision, a collective act of will that once made could not be reversed. Across Africa, the message resonated. From the streets of Dakar to the markets of Bamako, young Africans whispered it first, then shouted it louder. If Burkina Faso can stand, so can we. No spy could extinguish that flame. No sanction could unteach that lesson. No diplomatic pressure could reverse the awakening that had begun. And Ibrahim Traoré? He proved that while you can deceive a nation once, you can never deceive a nation that has opened its eyes and tasted freedom for itself. Burkina Faso wasn't merely resisting the world. It was rebuilding it, one truth at a time. And for those still clinging to the old colonial playbooks, one thing had become devastatingly clear. Not this time. Not ever again. Tell us, if you were in Captain Traoré's place, would you have allowed the fake businessman to meet you face to face, or would you have arrested him immediately? In your opinion, what should happen to spies like Jean-Luc Dupont who are caught trying to deceive African nations? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, changing world order, and current affairs. Things you need to stay informed. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.